Other yellow hat guy here, back with another video, and welcome to another Sympathy Forum, where I sit back and decide, should we have sympathy for this individual based on something that is going on? Now, people have been asking me, well, where's the sympathy for Will Smith? You could argue it could have been a sympathy for Chris Rock. I've combed through all the hot takes on the internet, some saying, it was racial related. It was about the hair and the alopecia. This is why Chris Rock was wrong. This is why Will Smith was right. This is why Chris Rock was right and Will Smith was wrong. And, we're going to get into the entanglement right here, right now. First of all, what I want to disclose here is Will Smith was wrong. End of the video, right? Will Smith was wrong. Why was he wrong, though? Well, you say, hey, you should never put your hands on another individual. That right there was wrong. And by law, you're absolutely right. Now, there are situations where people hurt other people, because hurt people, right? And then you feel like that's justified. But it's not, and we're going to talk about that right here, right now. A lot of these comedians, because they're comedians and they don't want people, everyday people like you and me, thinking that we could get on stage and clock them for saying something about us. How many times have you been in comedy shows, if you've been to them, and you're old enough? If you go to one and you're looking a little askew, you're looking a little different, don't be surprised if the comedian or comedians wailing on you. You're easy. They train for stuff like that. They're trained for somebody to look weird and add them into the, a custom experience, right? And or somebody to talk back. Because, this is how they eat. This is how they get paid. They get paid by making light of a situation, no matter how tragic it may be. They try to take the edge off, right? So, Chris Rock has been doing this for years to Jada Pinkett Smith, Will Smith's wife. Did I say wife? Wife. Been doing that for years, different jokes. There was, hey, Oscar is so white, which was a hashtag based on the fact that a lot of these nominees were all white people and none were black. And so since there was a lack of representation of African Americans and other ethnicities, Will and Jada decided to sit it out. Coincidentally, Chris Rock was the host that year and was like, well, it's not so much that, it was a white thing. It was that y'all just weren't invited. So there's a little bit of back history there. The other part of this is, Jada Pinkett Smith has this red table thing, this talk thing. It's like her podcast kind of. And she's pretty much emasculated Will Smith here, where she comments on his performance in the bedroom, his attentiveness as a husband, and all this stuff to where the memes have just, and I'm not going to post too many of them, but, there's the classic one where you see him crying, we ride together, bad boys for life. That kind of mantra is kind of how he looks at his relationship, I imagine, because some men would have been like, we're out. You had this entanglement with this younger guy who was supposed to be sick himself, supposed to have his own problems going on. You took advantage of him, slept with him, and suddenly Will is just like, I guess I just got to sit here and take this. Now, what we don't know is if Will hasn't done his own dirt. It's none of our business. The rumors are out there that they have, in their marriage, they can go ahead and be with other people, an open type marriage. And, if that's what you have, no judgment here on that. That's nobody's business but your own. But until you make it other people's business, until you get on a podcast or whatever and disclose all of this. So why is any of that relevant? Well, you saw what everybody saw. Now, full disclosure, I did not watch the Oscars. My mom messaged me at 4 something in the morning, sending me pictures of, or a video of the slap. And you would think this was WWE, WWF, where, dude just went up there and boom, and it was all to sell, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air revival or the reboot, right? Sell subscriptions to Peacock. But no, this was all ego, like a peacock showing off its feathers. This was Will Smith doing that here. Now, Jada had her head shaved, and Chris Rock made a Jada, I see you looking like G.I. Jane. So it wasn't even that great of a joke. You know, to me personally, to some people, they felt like it was just a lame joke. Uh, the context here is she's suffering from alopecia, so is it a low ball? Can you see that Will was upset by that joke specifically? I don't think so. There's footage they cut away to Will actually laughing. Now, that doesn't mean he thought it was funny as much as it's just like, hey, everyone else is laughing, so you laugh too. It's kind of a ha ha ha. And then suddenly, wifey looks at you and is like, so you thought that's funny, huh? If you want access to me tonight or any other night, you ain't going to continue laughing at that. Matter of fact, you going to stand for my honor. And here's where I feel about that. You don't have to fight somebody to stand by somebody. We have to get away from that caveman, reptilian type thinking. You don't have to actually do any of that. What you could have done is done one or two things. Could have just said, hey, we're out, we're leaving, deuces, we're out the Oscars. You know, that's how you really show your displeasure there, in a professional, classy way. The other thing you do is, if you do feel like you have the urge to get on stage and confront the person making the jokes, you simply use this as a moment to say, hey, look, my wife is suffering from blah, 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 blah. I would appreciate it if you stop with all the jokes. I've been through a lot. She's been through a lot. And leave it at that. Then you put the pressure on Rock and other comedians to say, hey, you know, maybe you just, maybe that was too far. Maybe you lighten the kind of jokes. You know, the Academy, you know, they are aware of most of these jokes. Maybe the comedians don't tell them everything, but, you know, you're aware of, you know, the kind of material that's going to be said, because you don't want situations like that happening. You're on stage, and you could easily have thought that was the BET Awards, watching what was happening with these guys on stage. But the Oscars, you know, room full of white people who just may not be used to the drama. It's like, oh no, it's going to turn into Tupac and Biggie. It was, you know, quote unquote, Chris Rock, the greatest moment in the history of television. Over time, I don't think that will be, but, you know, hey, let's hope that there isn't something worse that happens. But people say, hey, the worst has already happened. Before a lot of us are around, there was a guy called John Wayne, who, a legendary actor, but as a human being I'm going to say it, he's a piece of garbage. He was a piece of garbage. He wanted to hit a Native American woman, an indigenous person, for saying they wanted equality, you know, within the film industry or whatever. Probably not just in the film industry, just life period. And supposedly a group of 8 men tried to hold him back, you know, because he was really wanting to assault this woman. So thankfully that didn't happen, and it's unfortunate that Will Smith, you know, this thing happened. Now, a lot of people are like, well, why didn't the Academy remove him? Why wasn't he pulled? Well, maybe it's because he was going to win an Oscar. He knew he was going to win, right? That's one take, and that's how I felt up until the revelation was put out there that they actually wanted to remove him, but he refused. He refused to go. He knew he was going to get best, spoilers, he was going to get best actor or whatever for the King Richard movie, the movie about the father who raised Venus and Serena Williams, the tennis players, right? He knew he was going to get that, and so that was supposed to be his moment. But instead, he not only was his moment winning overshadowed by what he did, but also the other people who were there. You know, you had some female comedians who, you know, women comedians don't get that much attention and, you know, credit and respect and what have you. Here we had 3 of them, in fact, and nobody even thinks about that. Matter of fact, some of them said they were scared by the whole thing. So there's that. But you try to remove a guy who just slapped somebody out of anger and you don't know what their mental state is. I imagine in California, where it was at, there's not anybody packing weapons going into the Oscars, but hey, I don't know. I've never been. I wouldn't know what to tell you. Like I said, I was not thinking about the Oscars. It just happened to be that people that I know personally made sure that I was aware of what was going on. So I say that to say this, and I'll wrap it up as quickly as possible. Let's say Chris Rock did know she was suffering from alopecia. Does that make it right that Will hit him? No, it still doesn't. It still doesn't. That's like someone murdering a loved one. Does that give you then the authority to go ahead and do it? Now, look, I'm not going to keep going with different examples. Doesn't make it right, but I understand, right? That's Chris Rock's own joke for those of you who aren't aware. Doesn't make it right, but I understand. Somebody were to disrespect me, I want revenge. How many times does revenge stay revenge before it just becomes you being what you were trying to, get revenge on? Two wrongs don't make a right, eye for an eye, everybody's blind, all of that stuff. I get it. How do you reprimand somebody for telling a joke? Now, I could see if Will Smith went up there and slapped him because he actually slapped Jada. I could see that. Still doesn't make it right. But at least then, I think more people have been more empathetic of it. You got a lot of internet tough guys saying, yeah, that's what he should have done. A real man would have defended his wife's honor. Let somebody say something about my wife and I don't get up on stage and slap him. It's like, this isn't just some guy at a bar talking to your wife. This is a comedian who gets paid to take digs at everybody. If everybody got on stage and took digs at, or hit somebody who made a dig at them and that's their job, then we just wouldn't have comedy shows. So don't do that, kids. Don't get up on stage and try to insult. I'm going to tell a quick story real fast. I was in college. There was a guy. I don't want to use his name. We'll just say his name was Greg. And Greg, he made me the butt of all his jokes. Every day in the cafeteria we would eat. And it'd be me and a couple of bigger guys. He didn't joke on those bigger guys, but he was joking on me frequently to where I was trying to tell him, hey, look, stop with the jokes. But instead of stopping, he looked at me as insensitive and just, as if the problem was me not being able to take a joke. To where I just one day snapped. I went into the classroom that he was in, grabbed him up, took the notes that were in his hand, shook them out, threw them all over the floor, and walked away. I felt like my message was received, and he knew why I was doing it. This wasn't a out of nowhere you made a joke and I snapped. This was a culmination of things. So in my mind, I felt better about it because from here on out, this dude had nothing to say to me at all. He had no words. He matter of fact, he couldn't even make eye contact with me. I would look, he would just look the other way. There was no, hey, Greg, how's it going? There was just no communication there. Now, years later, I see how that should have been handled better. We should have been able to be two adults, and say, hey, look, these jokes, it's just too much. Can you tone it down? Or are we actually friends if you're constantly joking on me every day? That was a question I needed to have for myself. But I did what I did, and the result was he no longer was joking on me. But here you have Chris Rock and Will, who are supposed to be friends in real life. And, you could kind of, people, if you think it was staged, you're delusional. You could see the kind of nervousness in Chris Rock's eyes. Fight or flight, and some people add freeze to that, thinking, hey, you might freeze in the moment because you're trying to flee, but you can't, so you're somewhere in flux, somewhere in between both of those states. Chris Rock looked like that. Uh-oh, he tried to make light of it. Uh-oh, here comes King Richard himself, And Will looks like he's going to punch him. Now, keep in mind, Will's been trained to fight. He was in Ali and stuff like that. But I think a moment of clarity was, let me not punch him because I could really hurt this dude. But if I smack the mess out of him, leave some fresh prints, as some of the memes have said, the Sonic the Hedgehog rings were knocked out of Will Smith. I think the one I've got is the Street Fighter logo somewhere up in this video. Street Fighter 2, the beginning of that, somebody photoshopped Will Smith and Chris Rock in there. It's hilarious. But yeah, should have been handled better. And that was a culmination of jokes that Greg was giving to me. So for Will to... What it is Will wasn't... It could have been anybody up there. I don't think Will would have hit a woman. Some people are like, he wouldn't have hit a white man. He wouldn't have this. You don't know what he would have done. We don't know what he would have done. But I do believe that this was Will having enough of the internet memes and jokes on his behalf, on him and his wife's behalf. He looked at it as a moment to try to silence people who had stuff to say about him. That's how I feel about it. So do I feel sympathy for Will? Yeah, I do a little bit because, he's struggling with himself internally, and this marriage that he has is clearly. I don't want to comment on their marriage. I don't know. I'm not in their marriage to say if it's bad or good or anything like that. But clearly, there's stuff that has to be addressed, resolved, and worked on. And you can say that about everybody's marriage, everybody's relationship, right? But for him to get on stage and act the way he did, Will Smith, the black Tom Hanks, it was surprising because it was Will Smith. If it would have been anybody else, like, oh, Method Man went on stage and smacked Chris Rock, you'd be like, okay, I could see that. You know, he's told you in all his raps that he's that dude. But for Will Smith, you know, summertime, you know, I wonder what my stepdad, if he was still around, what he would say about this. But that said, let me know, do you feel sympathy for Will? Do you feel sympathy for Chris? What do you think of it all? Some people say both of them are in the wrong. Some people see both sides. I wanted to wait to hear more from either of them. Will apologized. He had a 6-minute speech where he apologized to everybody but Chris. But later on, he apologized to Chris. And the latest update is Chris put out some kind of thing, and people speculate it wasn't Chris himself, but his PR team. Doesn't really matter. Chris looked a little bit professional, more professional than Will did, and he maintained poise. Very hard to have composure in a moment like that where someone assaults you and then continue on the show as if that didn't happen. So kudos to Chris for that, because he could have squared up with Will. The future Oscars need to have Mike Tyson or somebody if they're not going to have security as the, you know, if they're not going to have Mike Tyson as the host, they need to have security up there to protect the talent that are there, right? Chris was like, hey, I'm getting paid to do a job, so I kind of have to keep rolling with this, right? But let me know y'all's thoughts in the comments, what you think, and see you in the next one. Other Yellow Hat guys out. Captain Sensation!